Welcome to A Moment with Modern Mentors. Hi, Andy Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us on A Moment with Modern Mentors. It's a pretty exciting interview today because it's in the lead up to Splendor XR weekend. Tell us about you and how you landed this awesome gig and what your gig is at Splendor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the game of music and brands for probably getting close to 20 years. It's a long time. And as a music lover from a young age, sort of this path wasn't something I naturally went after, but it sort of came my way, and was lucky enough to build a career in sort of merging my social life and my professional life into one. And I worked on Splendor for the first time, would have been 2010. And I was working representing a couple of clients, got to know the crew pretty well, and then did some time in New York with my own business, and then came back to Australia, and Christy, the MD, and I were chatting, and everything sort of worked out really perfectly for me to come in at a time where the business was growing, turning into what is now a very traditional creative agency that service brands who are looking to enter this space. So it's quite unique in Australia, which is the thing that probably appealed to me most. In how you sort of take something that's so iconic in Australia, but then fuse it with a more traditional way of creative advertising agencies and campaigns for brands that run the full gamut of paid media, content, experience, talent, etc., and have that rigor around it, which is the thing that for most brands that they're sort of always looking to quantify and qualify about how does it stack up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got your background, and I think you need to dig into a little bit more about what has led you and the jobs and roles you've been doing. But really, you've kind of everything you've done up until this point has perfectly landed you into this nirvana of the Splendor. Tell us what your give us your hi, I'm Andy Walsh spiel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been lucky in a way, and I think it's been a little bit through my attitude, but always pushing innovation in marketing and how brands can show up, and specifically in the music space, of course. But I think sort of my combination of skills is very much around that tech innovation space, and how you can bring people into environments in new ways, how you take creative experiences out to bigger audiences. And I think for what I'm doing right now is exactly that. It's taking what people love and know in music festivals, and Splendor XR is a great example where entertainment has changed, and that trajectory was already happening from a digital point of view. And I think my strength and my job is primarily in brand strategy. It's helping understand audiences, it's understanding brands and their own ecosystem, and finding really sort of creative solutions for how they plug in and make that space even more interesting and entertaining.
Can you tell us any of you kind of because your role is a brand role, right? So you do all the brand deals between the Tinders and the Red Bulls and Splendor in the grass. And obviously this is Splendor XR. So Splendor XR is happening this weekend, 24th, 25th of July, and it's all online. So it's an AR experience or virtual reality experience, augmented reality.
It's end to end. So you can watch on your mobile phone right through to a full immersive VR experience. So, all devices at home, it's web-based. Pretty friendly as far as your tech ability. You don't need to be VR nerd to sort of in. It's sort of, but that is going to be the most amazing experience where it feels like you're walking around the Splendor site in real life.
Amazing. So I'm going to be logging in. I bought my tickets today, log in. It's up on my screen. And then I can literally walk through the fields of Splendor.
Yeah, 100%. You'll have the old Heartbreak Hill to get back to the Golden View Bar. Very familiar. This time you won't be as puffed. You can, grab a drink up there. You can see the full stage of the amphitheater. The aesthetic design is very different. It's quite sort of ethereal and almost like psychedelic in ways that you'll see. There's giant mushrooms, for example,
cool.
In the space. I think adding that slight contrast as far as reflecting the digital environment that separates it from the physical North Byron Parklands was really important too.
Yeah, and I mean, you have obviously getting brands involved in such a kind of different type of brand experience. How have you gone about that kind of negotiation? Obviously, you've got lots of long-term relationships and existing kind of trust there, but what's involved in that kind of, getting people to understand something that isn't able to be demonstrated probably live. How do you bring that to life?
Yeah, and we always start with the audience first. And I think, we did a custom piece of research called Love Song in 2019. We're about to do another dip. It was 10,000 people going deep on their behavior in music, but also financial, lifestyle, social things. And for us, it's always starting with them. It's like, what do they do? How do they spend their time through COVID? What's changed for them? How do we make sure that we show up and be additive to that space? So thinking about that first, and then looking at the category from the brand. Who are their competitors? What's their role? How do they communicate? Current creative platforms, and putting that all into a pot. I'm just going, okay, here's where you can, genuinely add value and play a role, and think about how you, make yourself relevant in that space. And when you sort of make it a linear process like that, like you start to find those windows where you go, yeah, we can actually show up here and be someone that adds that experience. And whether that's at our home, with cocktail packs, we've got, a great partnership with Jimmy Brings. Red Bull are working with those guys to get Smirnoff Red Bull delivered to your door all weekend. So, there's ways that you sort of just take what's happening already with, direct to consumer mentality, like e-commerce platforms, and fuel it, or fuse it rather, with that sort of traditional thing that you'd expect at a music festival.
Because I mean, as you're talking about kind of your audience and your research piece, and I was thinking back to how probably when we first knew each other back in the Sound Alliance days, this is something that when I was working in the record companies, we used to love having Sound Alliance come in with their research piece. We'd be like, finally, someone's going to tell us about the audience that's actually got some fact associated with it. Totally. But it sounds like you're still doing a lot of research now. Is this something that you kind of pulled through your career? Is it something that you kind of shape? And tell us a little bit about that research.
Yeah, totally. I see myself as a bit of a torch carrier of sorts, like an ambassador of the industry that I know and love, because I think particularly in the last 18 months through COVID, the more that we can have brands helping support that industry in a way that keeps artists creating the music that we all love and listen to all the time, but also thinking about innovation in that space. So I think the more that you know about the audience, the more that you're empowered to give confidence to brands who are wanting to invest, that this is not the sort of, the trashy, poor, consumer that sometimes music consumers get lugged into as a bucket. They're actually the most influential audience that you'll meet across any category. They have high yield, they spend a lot of money, and they network more than anyone else. So it's it's a utopian world as far as the people you can talk to. It's just thinking about the way in and do it in the best way possible, because that takes a little bit of time and nurture.
Yeah, so are you able to kind of share any of the campaign and partnerships that you've got, or is it all under wraps until the weekend?
There's been some that's already out. So we're working with Mood Agent, which is a new music streaming service in Australia. Amazing to sort of, have someone new in that space here, taking on the Apples and the Spotifys of the world. So with them, it was very much around brand awareness. So they've actually got a cool little pop-up record store in platform. So people will be able to visit that and click on that and get the chance to get a free trial of the product. We're creating some beautiful artist content with them. So a series of sort of behind the scenes interviews with artists who are playing the bill. And we're digging into the emotional power of music and getting artists' take on, what is it about that? Because that's very much a key product for the brand, is using your emotions to guide what music that they feed you from an algorithm point of view. So it's sort of like thinking about that experience. So super excited to see that go live. We're working with Nike as part of the new Huarache release that just hit market on the 15th. They've got a cool little in-platform experience with Hugh, which is their little mascot that they had in the Huarache campaign years ago. So that's a partnership with Nike and JD Sports. There's a major promotion they're doing in retail and online for that shoe. So it's just tapping into a cultural moment for them. That's who their audience is. It's thinking about, okay, what's happening through this window? Where are their audience going to be? What are they going to be doing? And plugging them in at the right place at the right time.
I mean, it's in terms of a captive audience, you couldn't have really asked for a better time to have a Splendor XR released, could you? I mean, when I was talking to Christy a few weeks ago about it, it was before we had the lockdown. And I think that, you know, it was kind of like, well, we don't know how it's going to go. But now it's kind of like almost, well, you're going to go really well because people are home and they, you know, they need something to do. So it's a perfect time. How has sales and kind of, have they met your expectations? Have you been surprised? Is there anything kind of telling in there?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's such a different sales cycle. Like Splendor, we're selling out 50,000 tickets in under an hour and a half. So it's sort of like that's just a moment in time, and like there's a lot of anxiety that goes into
on sale.
Yeah, totally. It's the whole thing about who's buying tickets, having the cash, all that planning. This is a much sort of, I guess, build up momentum. As far as sort of thinking about what you've got on, because price point's pretty accessible. So at $30, you know, you're normally paying, you know, $400 for a Splendor ticket for 3 days. Now, when you've got, if you consider 54 bands who are playing over 2 days with a caliber of Khaled, who's I think number 8 most streamed artist on Spotify right now. Like Killer's one of the most iconic sort of rock bands of, you know, the last sort of probably 15 years. Like bands that would sell out arena shows, you know, $30 entry ticket is amazing. So I think, you know, we're already seeing now the build up to this weekend and the growth in web traffic and ticket sales, etc., to something that's going to be pretty exciting. And I think, you know, in platform, people are going to have their minds blown. Just to be able to walk around in a 3D world as an avatar and chat to other people. And that was, you know, Jess, who's our co-CEO, her vision was very much not being a live stream, but creating a community. Music is a community, and it's part of that rite of passage. If you want to go to a music festival, you want to be able to connect with a lot of people, strangers, friends, all those things, the random stories that become legend amongst friends for generations, right?
So how's that all going to work? I mean, you were saying before about like connecting via Zoom and interacting in the VR world, but are they going to be, you're saying you could go through and avatars. Can you actually meet some of your friends in the experience? Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was talking more so as far as like other people that are watching. It's almost like the Gogglebox type thing. I'm sort of watching other people watching the their reaction. But yeah, you totally can like you map your set time. So I could say to you, let's go and see the Killers, let's go and see Pink Sweats, and you'd meet up, you know, at a point and say like, you know, let's go back corner pole of the mix-up tent, and then go and hang out in that spot and see Pink Sweats together.
Is there a gold bar? That's what everyone's asking.
Interesting. The gold bar does exist, but it's just a bar. But again, through Jimmy Brings, you know, they service 80% of Australia. So as far as tapping into something that gets delivered to your door in 30 minutes, you know, you can get all your favorites from Smirnoff and Captain Morgan to Byron Bay Brewery, Red Bull, like all these great sort of products delivered to your door. It sort of feels like you're getting, you know, almost a VIP experience just by nature of everything delivered to your doorstep at home.
Oh, totally. I saw when I was buying the tickets that there was many of the party packs actually had sold out. So is that because it's just literally been, there's some kind of VIP ticket associated with that? How's that all work? Or is it just getting a bit close to the date?
Totally. And it all comes back to that emotional connection of all the things that you get at a festival. And you know, the diehards that will wear their wristbands for years and years and years, and they just don't come off. But, you know, like for those things, like having the festival cup to having a wristband and some of the things that just create that. And we know that people are going to be creating elaborate backyard experiences, and, you know, obviously COVID's safe, but having, you know, if they can have friends over to their backyard, have a big screen, you know, get the esky set up with all the right products, etc. Like having the cups and those things in the party packs, all those things just make it feel like it is something that we're all sort of craving to get back to. So this isn't a stopgap. This is sort of like a fusion of like the future of music festivals or live music in a way, in a new breed of music festivals, but also a great way to sort of keep the good vibes strong when people are lacking that in their lives right now.
Have you kind of modeled this off other festivals around the world, or I get the sense that it's quite unique in the style of the AR VR experience, but how did you kind of have the confidence to do this in such a grand scale?
Yeah, I think there's been things that have happened. The Weeknd did a really big AR piece. It was really highly produced. So did Billie Eilish. Jess, you know, has some healthy conversations with their teams and understanding the model. And theirs was a one-off experience with one band. Tomorrowland did one out of Belgium, and that was very different. It was sort of those festivals from a dance point of view are very focused, probably more so on the music and not as much as on the experience. And again, taking learnings from what they've done. But I think for us, it's very much taken what the strength of Splendour is, which is the caliber of artists, the depth of artists, the programming, but all the other experience. Because it's not just that. We've got TP Forest, we've got the Global Village, the Forum Tent. So Dr. Carl's featuring in the program. We've got an amazing stand-up comedy program. So all the things, even for the kids, Little Splendor, you can throw your kids in front of it if you're a little bit hungover. They can be entertained as well. So it's sort of all those little sort of special touches that I think make it unique. So it's taking what's happened globally in the trend of live streaming and commercializing that and making that a ticketed event versus free, which has been the history so far. But, once people see the platform, they're going to see where that money has gone and that investment has gone, because it's just a world that it's really hard to describe unless you're actually in there yourself.
And so you've got launching in 3 days' time on Saturday, and then it will be also featuring on Sunday. And is there a lot of production that goes live with it, or is it very much pre-produced and then it's delivered on the day over a time period? Like, how does it actually work to bring something like this up?
It's a bit of a fusion of both. So as far as pre-production, obviously having that many artists from a live stream point of view presents a lot of technical challenges. It's a lot to take on. So from a quality control point of view, there's been a lot working with artists and production in advance. But the experience itself is obviously live. So when they go on, it's set times as per usual. Fans are there in real time, sort of all together side by side. So it's sort of bringing both of those together.
Awesome. So the lineup is pretty epic. How did you manage to get them all across the line? Like, has it been quite easy, surprisingly easy? I suppose with that pre-production and pre-record on some of them, maybe it's not obviously everyone's got to be in one place at once and timed, but obviously there's still a lot of kind of, delivery of a new kind of format that you've got to get over the line. Has it been relatively straightforward to get it done, or a lot of hard work?
Me personally, am not as close to talent booking side of it. I'm in the loop as far as, as things progressed and we started to lock down artists. I think there's definitely, for bands, it's sort of understanding how they're going to be presented. I think it's the key thing. And they obviously know us and the Splendour brand and the quality of what we can do. And that's a great way to start a conversation. I think it's one, sort of understanding, how they'll be presented, but two, from a creative point of view, how they're going to present themselves, because obviously they need to think about that in context of a digital platform versus live on stage. So it's just a different lens. So I think that there's naturally a little bit of iteration that goes back and forth on getting to a point where you sort of have a clear position on what you're doing. So it's not just a straight up booking.
Totally.
So I think that those things are obviously a variable in doing that, and I definitely encourage you to check out Church's set on the weekend.
Okay.
I can't tell you too much, but from what I know as far as the technology and what they're doing, it's going to be definitely a special one to see.
Okay, awesome. Well, I mean, this is kind of leading quite nicely into a question I wanted to ask you, which was, what are you excited about? This is obviously, laying the future right here in music, but what are you excited about for the future? Because now that you've done this, what's next?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, come Monday, be a lot of catching breath a little bit after a very big build up and a busy period. But as far as this, like Jess's vision, I don't want to speak on behalf of her, but it's not a stopgap. It's something that is what we see as a great way to innovate the festival space. And, we love festivals in real life. I'm craving to be back at one. And like, there's a moment of like nostalgia almost now, sort of, thinking we'd be on site and drinking strummer cocktails and having that full Splendor experience with so many like-minded people.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever replace that sort of human connection of being there together. But I think what this does, though, is allows us to sort of bring different people who maybe sat on tickets or people looking for a different experience. We I'm at a vintage now where, I'm a little bit older, and like as a young punter, like camping with a bunch of mates, wouldn't think twice about it. Now camping, I'm like, don't want to do that at the end of the night. So
glamping.
yeah, absolutely. But I think fusing those together, where you get to see the caliber of some of the best, international indie bands in the world, in the comfort of your own home, with friends having a dinner party and going to your own bed, it just extends the relevance and reach of what we're doing. And I think the connection piece that happens in the platform, if you want to go all in with an avatar, you can still meet people and still have that complete unique thing. But I think it's going to be really interesting to get that dynamic feedback of how people interact in the platform, what bands they see, that connection that's formed, and then where that goes to from there will be, a really fun session to sort of get into.
Yeah, totally. And kind of back to what you were saying about audience, has it been interesting to see the kind of people that have, you've modeled it on, but who are buying tickets? Has it been kind of the same people that you expected, or has it been a broader audience for XR?
Yeah, and I actually don't know the ticket data as far as ticket purchases, so I can't speak to it. But I think it'll be really interesting to interrogate that. Again, look at the Killers. I remember 2009 V-Fest I worked on, where they headlined, and that's 12 years ago that was the case. And that, for people that love them then, they would still love them now. So naturally, like we've had the Cure play Splendour, so been around for a long time. So I think that we're always going to have that broad age demo. The splits on that will be interesting to sort of see what this represents. And even for teenagers, that for a lot of them that have seen Travis Scott in Fortnite, to these types of things, like that is entertainment for them. And like the physicality hasn't happened yet probably, but even a younger demo of people that could potentially get exposed to Splendour and get a sense of what a festival's like, in real life when they can go when they're old enough.
Maybe the younger ones. And so what do you think about VR and the future of kind of, virtual reality and augmented reality in our everyday? Do you think it's kind of something it's going to become more and more, something that we are exposed to in our daily life? How do you see that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the VR piece has been gaming skewed so far as what that looks like. Cultural moments in VR definitely sort of getting pick up, and Facebook have a VR arena now, so like they need to have a broad range of programming and content that lives in there. So you're reading the press about what they're up to in that space. So like there's naturally going to be money spent in getting content and investing in content and making that accessible, because the VR experience naturally leans to at home, like having the gear on your head. It's not something you can just carry in your pocket. I think from an AR point of view, I think we're already seeing some really fun examples of how you can sort of use your mobile phone to turn physical environments into hybrid digital environments, and the things you can add from an art point of view to an entertainment point of view to even practical things to sort of find your way around. We did a little test at Splendor in 2019, which was a Find My Tent, really fun way to sort of drop a pin on your tent. So like you actually hold up your screen, and as you get closer, the distance gets shorter, in the right direction. If that gets bigger, you need to turn around and head the other way. So it's like things like that, which are just a lot of
very
fun.
Valuable.
So it feels like that AR is more accessible, and you see it already with the social platforms like Instagram, etc., that are doing that kind of native plugin on AR. But it feels like that, like all that's happened in the last 18 months has escalated a lot of attention and focus, and you're seeing people that are now trying to find ways to have platforms and things that sort of stacking up in traditional sort of content world.
Yeah, no, totally. And so, I mean, back to our question about what are you excited about for the future? Is that what you're excited about, or is there something that you're seeing that we haven't seen yet?
I don't think there's anything secret in the can that that I'm sitting on, but I think what we're seeing though is that now that analysis of brands or artists, both of them in social media, that relationship and what's required to sort of stand out. And TikTok's been interesting as, that hybrid model of entertainment and social media. It feels very different where, they've just recently gone out to, I think it's 3 minutes you can do now content-wise on TikTok. So that algorithm of like a Netflix where it feeds you content that you like, just like they would, it's very different than a social media platform based upon your network, etc. So I think as far as how music plugs into that and how you consume music, I think there's a lot.
The track length, right?
Yeah, 100%. You sneak one in there, the rights conversation gets interesting in that.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Exactly. I'm sure that they're being had. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of like switch it up a little bit and just ask you a little bit about, some of the more, your more personal views on things, and kind of, you're seeing a lot of technology and uptake, and obviously you're right in the media and music and entertainment world. What are the kind of things that you like to see, or you'd like to see change or happen over the course? Maybe it's the music industry, maybe it's just a completely different kind of idea, but are there things that you're observing and in your career and your life today that you're starting to see that you'd like changed?
Yeah, I think that for me and it's probably a little bit of a market restriction rather than a change, but I have a business in New York and I was there for nearly 5 years, and the ability to innovate, to just change the way that like art and entertainment and music sort of come to life was, available and accessible, and brands having the I guess the passion and the foresight to think about, how that can be something that reflects who they are and builds relationships with an audience that are going to be loyal customers in the future. I think it was definitely wouldn't say eye-opening, but it was definitely a change in pace in Australia to come here and look at what's happening. And we've got some great partners, like, don't get me wrong, who are doing really interesting things in the space. But, how do we actually start to push what entertainment means? We've got this amazing startup world in Australia now. We've seen all these great tech brands come to life, and it's become, really aspirational. And for some people, like literally throwing themselves into it. So it's, how do we find a community of people that can come together and sort of, innovate in a tech world, help artists connect in new ways, but also help brands find new ways to engage as well. Because I think putting focus on that sort of intersection of where those things come together is something that I'd love to see happen more, because it feels like all the right ingredients are there. It just needs sort of a focus and attention to make it happen.
Would you say that Australia just is a little bit risk averse? Is that the limitation, or what is it that holds us back and kind of, pushing the boundaries more?
I think there's probably some realities from a marketing point of view as far as the task at hand, and where you can sort of like some of that stuff could probably be seen as discretionary marketing spend rather than a critical part of the mix. So I think that, by nature of that, you're not going to have the scale of investment. But I think that, like, we know, because we live it and breathe it, but, entertainment touches everyone, like even non-commercial radio to streaming services. From a music point of view, like you touch the bulk of the population in Australia. There's not much else, like probably nothing else in Australia that has that scale.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not niche. I think the opportunity is there. So it's just, how do you take steps towards that?
And do you find yourself kind of pushing brands into, boundaries that they're a little bit uncomfortable with, and having to kind of pull it back, and each year your trust builds and you kind of can go in more directions? But, compared to, say, when you're working for your agency in New York, you can get more away because people are kind of willing to try things. Maybe it's cheaper to get them up and running as well.
Yeah, I think that it's like our job is to obviously creatively and technically, push things as far as we can, but we do that with an informed lens of historic success where brands have had, like great results. And, you do that by being thorough in the planning, but also being clear on what success looks like. It's very important to make sure everyone knows, where you're going to and how you review that sort of objectively. And it's not just a big dream and a big idea that has no sort of end game.
So
I think that's part of it. And like naturally that process, like any creative process with where you have an agency and brand working together, you have to build trust. You have to iterate. You have to find, the right place where everyone's comfortable on what that is. And, our job is to sort of give the quality control piece, and the client's job is to make sure that it meets objectives and the things that they're trying to achieve as well. And, we always find a happy result, and we have a great success of retaining amazing brands. We've been working with Diageo for 15 years. I think that speaks a lot to the importance of this space and a trusted relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the ability to continue to innovate within a space that, has an audience that is very kind of I guess, savvy, but also, you know, a little bit fickle potentially in when they see something and they've exhausted it, then they need to move on. So you need to be constantly keeping up. Is there anything that you're launching this year that you're particularly kind of proud of or feel particularly excited about?
Yeah, we just did a campaign, and I always feel this is like walking on eggshells, like choosing one over another one. Feels like it's tricky, but it was a smaller campaign.
All, but
yeah, totally. Like it's like choosing your favorite child. But I think with this, it's like a small campaign in the sense of the scale of things that we have done typically. But we work with Heaps Normal, 0% beer. Like their whole mission is really important and powerful as far as giving people a choice. It's something that I wouldn't have considered, but you know, I can speak quite openly that I'm very much a loyal person now, and I don't think it's an age thing. Yeah. I think it's just nice to feel like you're enjoying a beer, but you don't have to worry about consequences afterwards. But not that I'm a brand spokesperson for them, but for them, a lot of what they were doing was brand education and storytelling, and they're very focused on, they've got a few verticals, and music is one of those. And I think musicians historically have always had this kind of very probably like tense relationship with alcohol. It can be a good thing and a bad thing, and that's like applies to anyone. But if you're an entertainer, it feels like it's probably around you more often than most in that world. So this story was looking at artists and actually going deep into what their normal is. And we know that normal for everyone is very different, but we created these sort of really beautiful in-depth stories with Psycho and also Kite String Tangle. Mm-hmm. Each of their stories was looking at what are the things that they do, you know, and Psycho summed it up beautifully as far as like her as a human versus her as an artist, and the ability to separate those two. And I think she's only 19, mm-hmm. like a level of maturity that's insane at 19. You know, I had no idea. As far as being so eloquent and self-aware on who I was just in the moment and didn't think too much of it. But how she separated herself as an artist, it's very like the strength of mental health and character to be able to think about that, and telling that story with the help of a brand that just wanted to tell that story in a genuine way. And it went so well. It was like short video content, portrait style, but for us to think about being a partner in that and helping, you know, create that story in a way that wasn't a festival program, but added to, you know, a really interesting conversation that young people have.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, you know, you as a human, kind of some of the things that are important to you. And obviously things, you know, like this exact example, you know, becoming more and more important, especially as we have all been living through COVID. A lot of mental health discussions come up, you know, young people being obviously having a very different kind of, you know, youth to what we had, where we had complete freedom, not even just through COVID, but, you know, they are restricted to being home, and, you know, clubs close at 12 o'clock. We never had any of that. So they're very much growing up in a different environment. And obviously Splendor having been around for such a long time, and, you know, how do you feel as a person? You've seen things evolve. Are you feeling quite proud of how, you know, the brands are all evolving as well?
Yeah, so I think the way that brands are now thinking about how they relate to their audiences that they want to market to, it feels like very much a two-way conversation more than ever. And it's listening actively, it's understanding what's important to people, and actually, you know, finding that as an opportunity to tell a story that may not have otherwise been on the table. And I think there's something very human about that, and like self-reflection that I'm sure has driven that for a lot of people in their own lives, and having to assess what's important, probably make tough decisions in the last 18 months. And I think more that goes down that path. And for us, we encourage that, because I feel that the music community in particular definitely embrace that as a lifestyle in the way that they're doing it. So it's sort of, it's in a really healthy place, and we're, you know, very excited to have a festival going live this weekend, but, you know, the return of festivals in the future and live music, and we're not out of the woods yet, and that's a very, you know, tense spot and sort of sour spot for a lot of people too.
Yeah, and I suppose there's going to be a lot of change just in the kind of confidence and mental health impacts on young people who maybe don't feel as confident as they might have felt had they been able to have the freedom kind of continuously. Look, this has been awesome, but we're going to have to wrap up soon. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of little personal things, like, so, you know, Lifechanging book and podium. If you had a podium and you wanted to talk about something really important to you personally, those two questions are the last two that before we wrap up, but you take them in your order, and I'm not sure if you're prepared for them or not, so you might need some thinking time.
This is probably the easiest question that I'll do. Like it's like literally I had a moment. It was like this kind of like major sort of like, I don't know what I'd call it. It's not quite an epiphany, but it was something for me. A book called The Resilience Project, which is Hugh van Kuytenberg. I'm sure I butchered his last name. He's from Melbourne. He was a primary school teacher and went on his own little sort of life journey and sort of became really aware. He was just an observational kind of analytical kind of guy and looking at why people were happy and what the things in their life about how they had genuine happiness. And this is going to the slums in India, to suburbs in Melbourne, and finding these common patterns. And the Resilience Project has this acronym, and it kind of touches on your second question as well. And it's GEM, which is gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. And it's not his. I think it's something that's kind of common. But as far as having things in your life as a philosophy that you can live by and improve your own personal life, but also improve those around you. And that one book for me, it led to a podcast of his called The Imperfects, which he does with Ryan Shelton, which is, again, an amazing listen on that. I've met all these other people, unless I met, have been introduced to from a digital point of view or books. So I've now got a pile of 10 books and about 20 different podcasts that I'm working my way through that are all around self-improvement. And I think that what it motivated me to do, I'm now giving back a lot. So I'm volunteering for things. I'm using knowledge that I've acquired over a long career to help young artists, as an example, in a program called Your Favourite Team in Brisbane, which is just giving them insight information to keep them motivated and educated on being an artist so they can keep entertaining. And I think in that, for me, it's what I'd sing from if I had a podium. Gratitude is beautiful. I have a journal, write down the things from, having power, shelter, food, water, in your life, to having good friends, to having a job, things that we take for granted. Empathy is like a life motto. Having empathy is beautiful. And mindfulness, like I meditate every day, sometimes twice a day. And like, I've never been happier. Like even through the most stressful things in the world, like I'm radiating now. And I think that was a turning point for me. So
when did you read the book?
It was before Christmas. I'm going to say it was probably 9 months ago.
Wow. And you've noticed a radical change?
Oh, 100%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's going on the book list for sure.
Yeah, it's a good one. People think I'm actually getting a clip of sales. I talk so much about this book.
Well, that's fine. Andy, it's been absolutely awesome talking to you. It's been fantastic hearing all about Splendor XR this weekend. I am going to be there. I'm so super excited about it. Probably with a blender full of margaritas, as we talked about, unless I read that book. Anything else you wanted to talk about before you jump off?
I don't think so. I think for Splendor XR, we're super stoked. It's actually on Friday at midday. We're opening the platform up for 24 hours for free. So people can get a bit of a tester and walk around and get a sense of what it is before the doors or gates open. Digital gates open at 2 on Saturday. So I think for me, I'd encourage everyone to have a look around. And, while we're all locked in, there's nothing more powerful than live music to lift the spirits. So,
and who's your top pick in terms of artists for the weekend?
Oh, that's big. Well, Churchill I called out before. I'm just curious from a technology point of view on their set. Killers as well. There's new music in some of those artists, which is always interesting, like collabs.
Yeah.
Bands I've not seen live before. Phoebe Bridgers, like amazing sort of vocalist. So, right down to Wafia, other bands sort of down the bill. Like it runs pretty deep. So I'm pretty excited.
And what about in terms of top tips on brand activations? Which one should we keep an eye out for them?
They're all fantastic equally. But I think one of the things that will be, I think, compelling and impressive and very familiar is Smirnoff the Wilds. So we've recreated the 2-story Wilds nightclub for Smirnoff in the platform. So same style of music, the same Smirnoff experience. So pretty exciting. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you very much. And yeah, we look forward to the weekend and seeing this go from strength to strength. And then obviously getting back out to the real Splendor too.
Absolutely. We all want to get the paddy.
Awesome. Okay.
If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe via your preferred podcast platform for more episodes of A Moment with Modern Mentors.